Hello there. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Oliver Johnson. I'm a major assigned to TABC's Enforcement Division out of Austin. I want to thank you all today for joining me during our TABC Teaching Alcohol Laws and Know-How series. The first thing I'm going to do is ask that everyone make sure your mics are muted. And if you have any questions, you can chat with me during on the side and during the using the chat function. Just know that I will not answer any questions until the end of the presentation, so the presentation goes smoothly. Some of your questions may be answered um, during the presentation. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to read a disclaimer. And the disclaimer says the following agency guidance was developed to improve internal and external communications and ensure a more consistent application of TABC's statute and rules. This guidance reflects appropriate processes, requirements, and interpretations based on the general situations presented herein. This guidance may not apply to every situation. If you have questions about how this guidance applies to your specific circumstance, please contact TABC directly. So again, you may interact with me, the presenter, by using the chat feature located in the toolbar at the bottom of the presentation window. And if you experience any technical issues, please visit Zoom's Help Center. So this presentation is entitled Public Safety in Retail Locations. And it's again presented by me, Oliver Johnson. I'm a major in TABC's Enforcement Division. I'm assigned to the Austin region. So as an overview, we're going to go over TABC's enforcement function. We're going to talk about minors. We're going to talk about intoxicated persons, drugs, breaches of the peace, sales / consumption during prohibited hours, human trafficking, and then there will be a summary at the end of the presentation. So we're going to start with enforcement function. So authority and duties. So TABC agents are fully empowered state police officers with statewide criminal jurisdiction and may make arrests for any offense. TABC's police authority is focused on licensed locations and individuals who commit violations of the Alcoholic Beverage Code. TABC agents place priority on locations that commit public safety violations. So we are police officers. We have statewide jurisdiction to make arrests for any offense. But we typically focus our efforts on the license of permitted locations in the state. That is what we get paid to do, and that is our focus. Now, that does not mean we will not enforce a law to stop any potential violence or anything like that. But we depend on the locals to take care of those arrests after we may have stopped any violence. So overview. Again, we focus our efforts on priority locations. So we conduct inspections at licensed locations that have a history of violations. That is where we focus our efforts. These permit holders and locations are called priority locations. And so when a licensed location is involved in certain administrative or criminal violation, it indicates it is a public safety risk. And so the 6 public safety violations that can get you on the priority list are sales to minor, sales to intoxicated persons, drugs, breaches of the peace, sales or consumption during prohibited hours, and human trafficking. So the first thing we're going to talk about is minors. So this section covers violations of the Alcoholic Beverage Code as they affect minors at licensed locations. So a minor is defined as in the Alcoholic Beverage Code as a person who is under 21 years of age. And so we at TABC, we focus our efforts on the retailer and not so much the minor. That does not mean we will not write a minor a ticket if they are possessing or consuming or purchasing alcoholic beverages, but we want to put our focus on the retailer and help them prevent the sale, service, or consumption on their licensed premise by minors. And so one of the things we do to ensure voluntary compliance amongst retailers is we regularly conduct underage compliance operations at retail locations licensed for on or off-premise consumption. Underage compliance operations are formally known as minor stings. So we do send minors in under our authority and have them attempt to purchase alcoholic beverages inside of licensed and permitted locations. So minors continue. So let's talk about the violations. A person commits a violation if with criminal negligence, they sell an alcoholic beverage to a minor. Now, we always get the question, is it fair if the minor has a fake ID? Are there any things that help out the seller? Well, there is. So it also states in the code that there is no offense if the sale occurs when a minor falsely represents himself to be 21 years of age or older by displaying an apparently valid proof of identification. So that word apparently valid, those words are very important. So again, by displaying a apparently valid proof of identification. This does not apply to a person who accesses electronically readable information and identifies the ID as invalid. So what that last statement means is if you go to the store and you attempt to buy beer, a minor attempts to buy beer, and when the cashier scans the ID, if it comes back invalid, you can still be charged with selling alcohol to a minor. You do not get the defense that the minor used a fake ID. So we're going to move into criminal responsibility. Only the person who serves, sells, or dispenses or delivers the alcoholic beverage is criminally responsible for the sale. It is a Class A misdemeanor, punishable by a fine of up to $4,000 and up to 1 year in jail to sell, serve, deliver alcoholic beverages to a minor. So the administrative consequences for the actual permit holder, for the licensee, is they can receive a penalty for a first-time sale. As more violations occur, the penalties get higher. For a first-time sale, it's 8 to 12 days or fined at a rate of $300 per day. So let me give you an example. If the permit holder is offered an 8-day suspension, they would also be offered a $2,400 fine, hence the $300 a day. So 3 times 8 is 24, so $2,400. As a permit holder or a seller or a business continues to sell to minor, if there are any other violations within a certain amount of time after the first violation, the penalties rise. The amount of days that they can be suspended rise. The fine per day stays the same. So violation number 2, possession or consumption by a minor. It is a violation. A licensee or permittee commits a violation if it is found that they sold, served, dispensed, or delivered on an alcoholic beverage to a minor, or allowed a minor to consume or possess an alcoholic beverage. So if you may have not have made the sale to the minor, they may have walked up and picked it up off the bar in front of you, and they're standing there consuming that alcoholic beverage. And if the permittee or the bartender, if they notice that minor and you know he looks underage, and we can prove that he was underage, a case could be filed for permitting that minor to consume that alcoholic beverage. And so the retailer can receive up to 90-day suspension or cancellation for allowing a minor to consume an alcoholic beverage on a licensed premise. This can be found in 106.13 of the Alcoholic Beverage Code. So we spoke a little earlier about fake IDs. And so fake IDs are out there. They're really prevalent. They're really good nowadays. They are not the IDs of the fake IDs of our forefathers. When I was a young man, where you just take your ID, you put a photo on top of it, and you go have it laminated, and you scratch your date off, and you change your date. The persons producing fake IDs have become really sophisticated. They have a lot of the same printers and equipment and the card stock to produce fake IDs. So one of the things we do, we have an acronym that we use when we teach people how to recognize fake IDs. It's called FLAG. And so the first thing is you want to fill the ID. You fill in for imperfections in the document, like overlays. Again, if there's, if they're putting a picture, they're overlaying a photo on top of another picture and they're laminating it. If there are any bubbles, if there are any rough edges, look for poor printer quality, misspelled words, those type of things when you're filling for when the F part of FLAG. So the L is look at the ID and make sure the person presenting is the same person that's giving it. That's the person presenting it to you is the same person on the ID. So we all know that sometimes, and we've seen, and based on my experience and my training, that people younger than the age of 21 will get a hold of their brother's ID or their neighbors, and they will try to use those IDs to purchase alcoholic beverages. So it's up to you to really look at the photo and look at the person to ensure that that person is the same person on the ID to the best of your ability. So the A is ask questions. Ask questions like, what is their address? What is their date of birth? When they graduated high school, to see if the person knows the information. Or you can ask for a second form of ID. One of the things I've done over my career is I've asked, hey, what is your zip code? Or if I'm familiar with the town where their address is, I'll ask them questions that people will know about that town, maybe about some specific locations or specific streets or specific businesses, just to get an idea if they know about the address that's on the ID. You can use all that information to kind of put together, we call that in law enforcement, totality of the circumstances to decide whether or not you're going to accept the ID. And so the last in the G is go slow. Go slow enough not to miss the first three steps. The job that you guys do is very important when it comes to minors. And so don't rush. I know there's a line behind the person most of the time. You're busy. And that's what we see most of the time is the clerks are busy and they're just not paying good enough attention because they're worried about getting a line through and the people behind them are upset. So take your time, go slow, and realize that the job you do is very important. So some of the other things you can do is know your company's policies. Make sure that when your company's given these policies, or if you're the boss and you're giving these policies, make sure that the employees understand how to check IDs, when to refuse a sale, how to refuse a sale, how to handle difficult customers, and when to involve a manager. So these are some of the things that you can do when checking IDs to help prevent violations when it comes to minors. So we're going to move on to our next portion. It talks about intoxicated persons. This section covers violations of the Alcoholic Beverage Code as they affect intoxicated persons at licensed locations. So intoxication is defined as not having normal use of mental or physical faculties by reason of introduction of alcohol, a controlled substance, a drug, or a combination of anything, having a BAC of 0.08 or more. Okay. So sometimes people get intoxication confused with public intoxication. So the next definition is it defines public intoxication. And so what that says is to appear in a public place, to appear in public while intoxicated to the degree that the person may endanger himself, herself, or others. It is a Class C misdemeanor to be in public, uh, to be publicly intoxicated. Um, and it's a fine up to $500. And the actual alcoholic beverage code actually defines a public place. Um, the permitted or licensed locations are considered public places in the alcoholic beverage code. So if you have a license or permit, someone can be arrested for public intoxication from inside the licensed location. Intoxicated persons continued. Sale to intoxicated persons, criminal consequences. So it is a criminal offense to sell alcoholic beverages to an intoxicated person. And it's actually not called, in the criminal side, it's not called sale to intoxicated person, it's called sale to certain persons. And it's what it says is 101.63, it says a person commits offense if the person with criminal negligence sells an alcoholic beverage to an intoxicated person to a habitual drunkard or an insane person. And you can find that at 101.63 of the alcoholic beverage code. So it is a misdemeanor. It's punishable by a fine up to $500 and up to 1 year in jail. Those are the max. That doesn't mean, if someone sells to an intoxicated person, that's what they'll get. Those are the maxes. So licensed locations can receive a penalty in which is either suspended from selling alcoholic beverages for 8 to 12 days on a first-time violation, or fined at a rate of $300 a day. We talked a little bit earlier about what that means. So if you're offered a 8-day suspension, and you would have the opportunity to pay a $2,400 fine in lieu of the 8-day suspension. Again, you can find this in 101.63 of the alcoholic beverage code. So prevention. How can we prevent? How can you guys prevent intoxication inside your businesses? So the first thing is being aware of the signs. So if you have customers who are leaning against structures or objects for support, if they have red, watery eyes, if they have droopy eyelids or tired appearance, if they have slow, deliberate movements, if they have slurred speech, if their motor functions are impaired, where they can hardly, get money or driver's license out of their wallet. Those are some of the signs. Those are not all by any means. Those are some of the signs. And again, it goes back to that thing, a totality of the circumstances. I wouldn't say just because someone has red eyes or watery eyes that they're intoxicated, right? So you take all those things and you kind of put them together based on your training and your life experiences. That's how you would determine if you think somebody is intoxicated. So some of the best retailer practices to prevent intoxication. Number one is don't announce last call. That can encourage a rush to the bar. Let me get as many drinks as I can. And I know that that at the last minute, I want to consume these. I spent my money on them, so I got to drink them. And so now it's just this rush to drink all these drinks, and you can get intoxicated really quickly that way. Do not sell shots or provide bottle service after 1 a.m. Do not allow promotions that encourage customers to drink to excess. Just an example of this is, having a contest between your bartenders and your staff to see who can sell the most of this drink, of this alcohol, which encourages them to push the alcohol as much as possible. No games that will, that will allow, like Pong. You can't allow Pong or different drinking games, drinking Jenga, any of those games inside your license or um, permitted locations. Um, do not encourage them to drink to excess. We just talked about that. Do not sell or serve drinks in oversized containers after midnight. No fish bowls after midnight. No um, large containers of beer after midnight. Um, and I would even recommend, fish bowls or the large containers of beer, or bottles. Make sure that it's more than one person who are consuming those drinks. Have a plan in place to deal with intoxicated customers. So whether that is having Uber or cabs available, or making sure that intoxicated customers have a responsible party to take care of them, um, so they don't leave and get out of there prior to, while they're intoxicated, and be on their own. So at 2 a.m., turn the lights on to observe for any intoxicated patrons. Turn the lights on so you can see what's going on inside. And so if you see any intoxicated patrons, you can get them a ride. So the next section covers drugs. This section covers violations of the Alcoholic Beverage Code in relation to drugs at licensed locations. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to define narcotics. And so the Health and Safety Code, which you can find it at 41.002 and 41.1031, defines narcotics as any substance, including controlled substances, marijuana, and synthetic cannabinoids. So it is a violation to allow possession or persons to consume narcotics on a licensed premise. So what the code says is no person authorized to sell distilled spirits or beer at retail locations may engage in um, or permit on the premises the following acts: possession of narcotic or synthetic cannabinoid or any equipment used or designed for the administering of a narcotic. And so, if so, no weed pipes that have been used to consume marijuana, any synthetic drugs, any heroin, anything like that. You cannot allow persons to possess that on your licensed premise. And we always get the question, well, what if a person gets arrested with drugs in their pocket and I don't know that they have it? Okay, we will not hold you responsible for that. But just to give you an example, if we come in and there's and these are extreme examples. And there's a gentleman sitting at the bar snorting a line of cocaine with the bartender standing right there looking at him. That is a way that, allowing someone else to possess narcotics, you can get in trouble. Now, the example I gave was extreme, but that is one of the ways. And if you have further questions about that, you can contact your local office and they'll be happy to help you with answers to that question. So how can you prevent violations? Um, so some of the consequences, you can receive a penalty in which is either suspended from selling alcoholic beverages for 25 to 35 days. That is for a first-time violation, or you can be fined up to $300 per day. So again, if there's a violation and you agree to settle at 25 days, you will be offered the opportunity to pay a $7,500 fine. Now, depending on the circumstances, it could be canceled for cause. They could just say, hey, you had 300 kilos of cocaine in the back room. We're just going to cancel you for cause. And so, again, a first-time violation is usually 25 to 35 days, but you can get canceled for cause. So how can you prevent? Employers should be diligent about making sure employees are not possessing or using narcotics at licensed locations. And permittees and employees should monitor your patrons. So you should have enough staff walking around and monitor your patrons to ensure that narcotics are not being used inside your licensed location. And what I encourage you to do, if you do see that, contact local law enforcement and have them come and take care of the issue. So we're going to move right into breaches of the peace. So there are several different types of there are a couple different types of breaches of the peace. They fall into two categories. One is a simple breach of the peace. And in a simple breach of the peace, there is no serious bodily injury or a deadly weapon involved. And so what a breach is, and let me go back and explain what the breaches of peace is. It can involve a fight between patrons, a fight between staff and patrons. It can involve um, destruction of the bar's property, police response, ambulance response, anything like that is considered a breach, right? And so a simple breach is a breach of the peace, again, where there's no serious bodily injury or death. So just imagine a fight, somebody punches somebody in the face and it's over. So that would be considered a simple breach. So a report to TABC must be made within 5 days following that incident, right? So aggravated breaches of the peace involve serious bodily injury or death, and that are a deadly weapon. And so, some of the things we tell our permit holders that, a deadly weapon could be scissors, it could be a knife, it could be a gun, it could be a bottle, anything that can cause serious bodily injury or death. It could be a car to a person. A report for a aggravated breach must be made to TABC within 24 hours following the incident. And so you can find that in different chapters in the code, 22, 28, 69, and 71 chapters of the Alcoholic Beverage Code. So how can it be a violation? So if you as a permit holder allow a simple breach of the peace, it's, again, a penalty can be assessed. You can be suspended for 3 to 18 days or fined at a rate of $300 a day. For an allowing an aggravated breach of the peace, for a first-time violation, is 25 to 35 days, or it could be cancellation depending on the circumstances. And again, fined at a rate of $300 per day. And so some of the questions we get is describe how I'm allowing a breach of the peace. So one of the ways is if you have a group of people who are arguing inside the bar and they're arguing for 30, 40 minutes, they're throwing gang signs or cursing at each other, and then a breach occurs and staff members did nothing to prevent that breach, you may be, depending on the circumstances, charged with either allowing a simple breach or allowing an aggravated breach. There are different scenarios. I can give you one, and based on my experience, there was a waitress inside of a bar. There were two gentlemen arguing. The bartender and the waitress and the staff knew they were arguing, and one of the gentlemen gets on his telephone. He calls someone and he says, "Hey, bring the shotgun. I'm going to shoot someone." And so someone brought a shotgun, and he did what he said he was going to do. And this occurred over amount of time. This just wasn't like a few minutes. It occurred over about an hour and a half time period. And so they were charged with allowing an aggravated breach of the peace. If you have any specific questions or situations you want to ask about, please call your local enforcement office. So preventing violations of breach of the peace. Number one, monitor alcoholic beverage consumption, right? So intoxication a lot of times leads to breaches of the peace. We find more often than not that persons involved in these breaches are intoxicated. Monitor your patrons for aggressive behavior or language toward other patrons. So what we recommend is you separate or remove said patrons. You can put somebody out the front door, put somebody out the back door, just to make sure they go about their merry way. Don't just push them all out the front door and allow it to happen in the parking lot. Try to locate responsible parties to take custody of any instigators. Contact your local law enforcement if the situation escalates. And what we say is if you have a person who is continual problems for you every weekend, every week, consider banning those patrons and getting those patrons criminally trespassed from your businesses. So there are several different ways you can report breaches of the peace. The first is you can use our online format, and that could be found on our website, on our public website at www.tabc.texas.gov breach of peace. You can email your report to breach of peace at tabc.texas.gov, or you can download our mobile app from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store and submit a report. And so when you're submitting these reports, this is some of the information we need. We need the, just like we learned in school, the who, what, where, when, and how. We need all that information inside this breach report. So penalties for an establishment. A licensed location can be suspended. Their alcohol sales can be suspended for 2 to 12 days on a first-time violation, or depending on the circumstances, it could be cancellation for failing to report breaches of the peace. And again, you're fined at $300 a day, at a rate of $300 a day. So our next thing we're going to go into is hours of sale. So this section covers violations of the Alcoholic Beverage Code as they affect sale and consumption during prohibited hours at licensed locations. So standard hours are Monday through Saturday. And again, these are hours of sale. Standard hours are Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 12 midnight. Sunday, basically Saturday night going into Sunday, 12 a.m. to 1 a.m. And then normal Sunday is from 12 noon to 12 midnight. We've all been in Walmart and you see, I was there last week and I saw a gentleman come. It was a Sunday. A gentleman come up and he's trying to buy beer. And the clerk was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, you got to wait 3 minutes." And he was from out of town. He was a little disappointed, but he got out of line and he waited his 3 minutes. So again, 12 noon to 12 midnight on Sundays. Now, there is a caveat for on Sundays. You can start at 10 a.m. With the service of food or at a festival, fair, winery, sport venue, or a concert. So if you're serving food or if you're at a festival, a fair, a winery, or a sport venue, you can sale can be at 10 a.m. if it involves those items that I read below. So for on-premise, consumption, there are extended hours in some areas. So those hours are Monday through Saturday. On-premise sale. Those hours are Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. And this is an extended hours area on-premise sale. And so on Sundays, it's still from 12 noon to 2 a.m. Again, with the caveat at the bottom, 10 a.m. with the service of food or at a festival, fair, winery, sport venue, or concert. The next we're going to talk about is consumption. Okay, again, there's standard hours and there's extended hours. The standard hours for consumption is 7 a.m. to 12:15 a.m. And then again on Saturday night going into Sunday, 12 a.m. to 1:15 a.m. So Sunday from 12 noon to 12:15 a.m. on Monday. So in an extended hours area, consumption is from 7 a.m. to 2:15 a.m. And then on Sunday, it's from 12 noon to 2:15 a.m. Again, these are consumption hours, and there's still that caveat, 10 a.m. with the service of food at a festival, fair, winery, sport venue, or concert. So selling alcohol during prohibited hours, it is a criminal violation associated with it. It's a Class A misdemeanor, and it's punishable by a fine up to $4,000 or up to 1 year in jail. Administrative consequences: a licensed location can receive a penalty, which is either a suspension from selling alcoholic beverages for 5 to 7 days or fined at a rate of $300 per day. And this can be found in 10510 of the Alcoholic Beverage Code. How can you prevent prohibited hours violations? Number one, have enough staff inside the location to work. If it's a bar and there's 200 people inside and you have a bartender and that's it, that's not going to work. You need more staff available to take care of your patrons and to watch over them. So employers and their employees can prevent violations of selling or allowing consumption over inhibited hours by picking up drinks from patrons with plenty of time to spare before meeting the cutoff time, monitoring the sales of alcoholic beverages prior to cutoff time so that patrons aren't rushing to purchase more drinks, collect unattended alcoholic beverages prior to cutoff time, and utilizing bar time clock setting. So setting your clock 10 to 15 minutes early. So the next section is probably the most important for us here at TABC. At TABC, we're the only agency in the state whose primary mission, primary function is to eradicate human trafficking inside licensed and permitted locations. That is our, what the job we have been given. Right now, that is what we're focusing on. So we're going to define it. Human trafficking is recruitment, harboring, transporting, or procurement of a person for labor or services for involuntary servitude, slavery, or forced commercial sex acts. Simply put, human trafficking is modern day slavery. And so you can find a bunch of information about human trafficking through the Attorney General's office. Through their Be the One campaign. So some of the consequences, the commission will suspend or cancel a permit of a licensed location for violations of human trafficking. Licensed locations are required to post signage, warnings about human trafficking, and what the sign basically says: obtaining forced labor or services is a crime under Texas law. Call the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 1-888-373-7888, and you can remain anonymous. There's also information about how to identify someone who's being trafficked. If you look up the Polaris project on human trafficking, there is quite a bit of information about human trafficking and recognizing signs. I would also encourage you to go and watch the Texas Attorney General's Office Be the One campaign video, and that can be found on their website at www.texasattorneyggeneral.gov/initiatives/human trafficking. So this basically concludes my presentation. So in summary, all the stuff we talked about, every situation was not included. So if there's anything pertinent or specific to your bar, or you have a specific question, please contact your local TABC office for more information. We are also available at TABC to provide a more in-depth education for retailers via our retailer education and awareness program. If you give us a call or give headquarters a call or your local office and ask them about our REAP education program, we will be more than happy to come out and educate you. Now there may be some mitigating circumstances as it relates to COVID, but we will let you know what those issues are if you call and request more training. I also encourage you to go to our website, www.tabc.texas.gov. All the information I went over today can be found on our website. Please go there and check it out. We've recently revamped our website. It's great. I think we've done a good job at making it better and more useful to the public. So if you have any questions about this presentation, I do not see any questions in the chat function. So my live viewers, if you have any questions, again, use the chat function. I do not see any. So if you have any issues or you have questions, please send an email to stakeholders@tabc.texas.gov. Thank you so much for taking your time out to watch this presentation. And again, you can send us recommendations on topics you'd like addressed in the future TABC talks at stakeholder.tabc.texas.gov. And please help us improve this program by participating in a short survey following the presentation. Thank you so much. I appreciate you for taking your time out of your day. Please be blessed and go in grace.